Batman has always been dark since its inception, and I think that's something that a lot of the TV shows have captured pretty well, especially when looking at Batman the Animated Series and the new Batman the Animated Series, which in my opinion was even darker than the original. But for me, what holds the cake is Batman Beyond, and that's specifically due to the wide range of horrific situations that they show, and also my own personal bias in the fact that I'm a huge tech guy, and technological horror, specifically about future technology, is very big to me. And this show, being made in the 90s, did end up predicting a few bits and pieces of tech and used them in their own horror showcases. So I really want to talk about Batman Beyond and a few episodes that I've picked out, because man, this show was dark. First episode I want to talk about is Earth Movers. All of these episodes will be taking place in the second season because I'm just now getting around to it, and while I was doing my watch through, all I could imagine was, wow, I watched this as a kid. No wonder I had so many nightmares growing up. Earth Movers as an episode serves to basically play as illegal dumping is bad and companies should follow their regulatory, situations in order to dump their chemically toxic material properly. That's how this whole entire episode plays out, because of an improper dumping of chemicals, which led to the unfortunate death of one of their workers at this company. And so the big head of the company, in what is honestly just guilt, adopts the daughter of the person who died. And of course, the person who quote unquote died didn't, because this is magical future radioactive waste that they've dumped illegally, which is also highly dangerous. I like how this show uses elements of real life, such as companies illegally dumping waste and putting their people at risk, all for, some extra profit and money, because dumping it the right way is apparently too costly and just not what the board of directors would want. And all of this, unfortunately, would lead to an employee being trapped underneath and soaking with that chemical for, I believe, the last 10 years is what this episode had mentioned, and it ends up leaving him completely connected to the earth. He has a full ability to kind of control it and make his own little earth demons to handle his dirty work, and all he really wants to do is to see his daughter and also get revenge on the dude who did this to him. And this is where we get what I would argue to be one of the most horrific images I have ever seen in children's television. To me, this was absolutely insane as a kid, and this was the spectacle of a lot of my nightmares, because oh my gosh, this is an emaciated, dying man who is only being kept alive via a bunch of chemical waste tubings connecting to a corpse, because that's what he is. It's a corpse. It was so scary as a kid, and I cannot believe this aired back in the day. I feel like I say this a lot about, older television, as though modern kids TV doesn't get away with a lot, looking at The Amazing World of Gumball, for example. But again, it's beyond shocking that they were able to show this on television, like for kids specifically. I just thought it was absolutely wild, and his last words are also equally as haunting. Because at the end of the day, all he really yearned for was his daughter. I could not really sit here and derive a real big message to give you outside of what the episode lays out plainly, other than to say, this shit was scary. And I really enjoyed the episode for that, but also will not be showing this to my kids anytime soon. If I have kids, hopefully not soon. And now a word from our sponsor, which is absolutely nobody today. So if you want to help out the channel, please leave a like and subscribe. Helps out a lot if you're enjoying the video. Other than that, back to your regularly scheduled program. The next episode has to deal with something that I think will become more and more prevalent, especially for rich people, as time goes on. We've already seen huge advancements in AI. I mean, 2 years ago, ChatGPT wasn't even that big of a thing. And now you got students online all the time talking about how they're using it. And so that leads into the application of making an AI of yourself so that you could potentially control a company long after you are gone, specifically for the rich people. So Vance created an AI of himself 35 years prior, which ended up sitting on the shelf for a while because obviously they thought this was stupid and whack. But just looking at his face and his voice throughout the entire episode, and the way he subtly manipulates his grandson to put him online and to give him a consciousness into this modern world, and the way he's able to take over modern technology so easily, I just found it to be very horrifying because, in all honesty, we're not too far away from that. And again, his face and his voice is just so creepy.
That was just a pose by me, so people would leave me alone. I needed to buy some time. Put me online and you'll see.
I don't know if...
Do it!
It's really ironic to think that the implications from this show are low-key coming to fruition. I believe this show, I can't remember if in the timeline, this is either perpetually 22 or 23 years or 30 years in the future from Justice League Unlimited, or if this was just set in like the 2040s. Because if so, it's funny to think that we're not too far off from something this show somewhat accurately predicted in the use of AI and potentially mapping your own personality to said AI, because you can really just train an AI model off of anything, and you can theoretically train it to be within your personality, feed it data based off your day-to-day interactions, and create a faux version of yourself in the cloud. Technically, it's not perfect and it doesn't 100% work that way, but it could. Getting back on track with the episode though, Terry is slowly losing control of his suit because once again, Vance has uploaded himself onto it via a laser beam. We get to see his really creepy face again, and even more so, another portion of horror, which is complete loss of your body and all of your functions. As we as a society become more integrated with technology, and we look at prostheses that are not just for those who have lost limbs, but to just help us do our everyday lives, the idea that we could be hacked and taken control of and do things against our will is becoming a bit more prevalent as of late, and that's definitely something that is high up on my horror list. What makes it all even creepier is that I'm 100% sure Vance himself, because how vain do you really have to be to want to upload your consciousness into an AI and live forever and forever run your company because you don't think anybody else could ever do it better than you can? I mean, there's plausibility that he was always like this and that he wants to actually take over his teenage grandson's mind and body and use that body to further his goals in future, like somebody else named Ra's al Ghul did to his own daughter. And while that's totally plausible for him to do, there's also the idea that potentially the AI is corrupt, that it's not giving an accurate representation of who Vance was. But let's keep it a buck here. He's just a rich guy that owns a company, and he's probably obsessed with immortality, like a lot of rich people are for some reason. I wouldn't want to live forever, but if you do, that's cool, I guess. Either way, he steals Batman's suit and absolutely violates his teenage grandson, who came to him for help, mind you. His teenage grandson just lost his dad, was afraid that he would run the company to the ground, and asked for help from his grandpa. What does his grandpa do? He manipulates him into uploading him to the cloud, then goes on a crime spree, then tries to steal his body, and it's insanely horrific. Also, the ending scene here is also horrible, because it's quite literally watching the AI regress into not even being able to do 2 + 2 from a large amount of intelligence, and it's just eerie because you know you're watching what is ostensibly the death of somebody permanently, and it's definitely kind of weird. But moving on from that kind of AI horror, instead I want to look at more tech horror, but technology that will provide you the ultimate escape. I play video games. I play video games pretty often because I like escapism. I like to play video games. That way I don't have to think about those missing assignments that I totally am doing for my summer school. But this takes escapism to an entirely new level. It's essentially a brand new portion of VR tech, something that we have, that it works really, really well relative to how like early VR tech was in the 90s, like Nintendo's terrible VR headset. No, this provides you the perfect escape, a life you've always wanted. And for some people, it's grandeur. It's the want for them to be rock stars, have girls fawning over them. And for others, it's as simple as wanting their families to be whole. And this would eventually lead people to falling into addiction, specifically because Spellmaster is using a modified version of the VR technology and is using that to get people hooked and to get them to steal for him. This is so obviously a stand-in for drugs or alcohol abuse. I mean, it can't really get more obvious than this, but it really hits close to home for me specifically because they're using the outlet of technology and they're using the outlet of escapism. Let's be real for a second. A lot of video games are designed to get you addicted so that you keep playing or keep buying microtransactions while playing them. Marvel Rivals is definitely up there with trying to keep you addicted and buying skins, and I'm totally guilty of like 300 hours on that game. But what I found so interesting about this VR tech and the fantasies people had, like I had said previously, sometimes it's something so simple like just wanting to go out on a date with the shy guy from your local McDonald's, right? It's these tiny things. It's not always delusions of grandeur people want, but it's these small things that matter to them that they want and they're seeking out via this technology because they don't get it in real life. For reference, think about the lack of, at least speaking for America, the lack of third or second spaces for specifically youth like teenagers to hang out, to meet people. Free spaces, mind you, not spaces that you have to pay for. I can't tell you any amount of places around where I live, and I live by a high school because, you know, I was in high school like a year ago. There's not a lot of places for people like that were around that age to hang out, to go out and meet people, to talk to people, to create these connections. So you're stuck making your friends either at work or at school, and once school's gone, all you have is your job to make these connections with people. And some people literally just want to show up to work, get their paycheck, and go home. And then they're miserable afterwards. So this escapist technology provides them a way of fulfilling that fantasy without having to actually go to a dwindling third space that costs a lot of money. It's honestly a little creepy how well that kind of segued into a lot of the issues that at least people around my age-ish were facing here in America. I don't know how third or second spaces are in other countries. What really hammers this home though in the episode is the fact that Max goes along with it. She wants to play undercover and hopefully get an idea for what's going on, but instead she ends up getting hooked on her own fantasy.
Oh, you're home, Maxine. How was your particle physics test today?
Another 100.
That's our girl.
Fixed your cycle for you, sweetheart. You shouldn't hear that rattle anymore.
Thanks, Dad.
It's genuinely so sad. All she wants is for her parents to be together, for her family to be home at all times, and to be there to celebrate her. This ultimately leads her to doing the same thing that everybody else was, stealing for this horrific man just so she can feel like she has a home.
Your whole family lives here?
Whole family is just me and my sister most of the time. The folks split up when I was a kid, and Mom's on the road a lot for work. I guess you and I both have our secrets.
The reason I didn't title this video scary or anything else is because I wanted to cover these episodes in season 2, which aren't necessarily scaring, but more so disturbing or simply just sad. This episode for me was sad, and in all honesty, I feel like slowly but surely we're all kind of moving towards something similar to this. I have watched my time on TikTok increase, not by a whole lot, but by a slight amount over the last year. I've watched my time video gaming actually decreased because of this job, but this job has kept me at home a lot more. It's definitely something I can relate to and something I see as continuing to move forward as technology progresses. And it was really a little disturbing to see on screen. Now granted, of course, because Max is a mainstay character as of season 2, she's going to give up her addiction to this place. She's going to give up that place for the benefit of helping Terry and saving the day, and the show tries to have a conversation about addiction at the end, but they really don't do a particularly great job about it, in my opinion. But I'm gonna give it a slight pass because it was the 90s and the idea and way of thinking around addiction was definitely different back then. The next episode I want to talk about is The Last Resort. It's all about sending your kids away to a ranch, or also could fill in as an allegory for like boarding school or middle school, because they are troubled youth and they are not, you can't help them as parents. They're graffitiing, they're not showing up to class, they're not doing what you say. And so there's an institution that offers to train them and to take care of them and to teach them how to get on the right path before it's too late. And all you have to do is send them there.
At my ranch only minutes from Gotham City, I offer the very finest long-term therapy for adolescents. Yes, it is expensive, but think about the alternative.
And just about every day that goes by, more and more of Terry's friends, because Terry low-key a little bit of a delinquent, and he low-key runs in like the delinquent circles, but then again, he's also a vigilante, so who's really surprised? More and more of his friends end up going missing. And Chelsea, who happens to be somebody he's friends with in his school, ultimately decides to write a letter to the principal as they keep sending these troubled kids straight to this place. One of their classmates just was like graffitiing on a wall, which, yeah, sure, not cool, but does that really require him to be sent away to a camp far from his parents? And when after Chelsea writes that interview to the principal, her dad sends her away, which is nutty to me because, like, to the best of my knowledge, Chelsea wasn't cursing or anything. She was just like giving him an earful. But to be sent away for it is absolutely wicked. And what we come to find out at this ranch, that's just what I'm going to call it, is that it is rife with abuse, neglect, and just horrible practices. They quite literally have isolation rooms where they send these poor kids to be in a room. Full disclosure, I completely messed this up and got it confused with another show I'm watching. The room is complete sensory deprivation, so no light, no sound, no anything. You're just stuck with your thoughts for those few hours. For reference, the kid that was doing the painting, as you saw earlier, he doesn't paint anymore because that's not what the program wants out of him. They want to make him the perfect child, which means to be docile, not to be free thinking, and not to basically question any sort of form of authority, because if you do, you're sent to isolation. And places like this do exist, and unfortunately in real life, they're rife with abuse some of the times. The first idea that jumps to mind personally is the ranch, a place that Dr. Phil would often recommend to parents to send their kids to if they were, showing up on the Dr. Phil show pretty much. By the way, Dr. Phil wasn't even a doctor because he hadn't renewed his doctorate in like a decade while that show was going on, so that's just wild to me. But basically what you'll find online is the ranch has been involved in a lot of allegations of sexual abuse and misconduct of the workers, mistreatment of the kids when it came to meals, when it came to breaks, when it came to water, and things of that nature. Now granted, the one lawsuit that you can find isn't actually a lawsuit against the camp, it's a lawsuit against Dr. Phil, which was thrown out because, Dr. Phil's protected under free speech technically, even if he did recommend the camp. Either way, I feel like it provides a pretty decent parallel to this episode, and the idea that a lot of these camps where parents send their kids away to aren't exactly the safest nor the best for the kid. Now, obviously, there's a reason the parent is sending the kid away, and cases like Chelsea's, where her parents are sending her away because she wrote a mean email, are probably more rare. As well, I'm not a parent, so I'm also not the most qualified to address whether or not, somebody should or shouldn't send their kids to this place. But I'll tell you this, just being personal, not being objective, I'm not sending my kid to one of these places because who the what they're going to do to that child at a place that is so far away from me that I'm just leaving them there. Hard pass. Anyways, allusion to real life aside, which is what I think makes these moments so dark or scary, Terry ends up finding Chelsea and she is looking rough, dude. This is what happens when you challenge authority there. And so Terry wants to get this on recording and hopefully prove to the public that this place is bad and is terrible.
it's total sense deprivation. No light, no sound. He uses it on the kids who don't get with the program.
Of course, though, this doesn't go well for Terry at all. Not only was he never able to make headway as Batman in this place, but now he can't even make headway as himself because he gets caught with a camera, in no part thanks to the dude we saw at the very beginning of the episode. And unfortunately for Terry, this means being trapped in isolation as well. Now, of course, Terry is Batman and Batman is cool, so he's going to break out and not really have much of an issue. And he ends up recruiting the guy we saw at the very beginning of the episode, who should hopefully be on screen right now. The two end up orchestrating a breakout, getting everybody out of there, and getting them all riled up to hopefully basically fight the security guards, or at least try to scare them off due to the fact that, you know, numbers win all. And eventually Terry is able to go and get his backpack and his bat suit. I think, and then that's just like kind of the end of the episode. Obviously, the dude from the very beginning needs to be shown that he is very bad and very evil to help justify the existences of places like this. And it's something at the end of the episode that I don't really agree with, is the idea that places like this are a necessity and that they are needed. And that's exactly why they should be around. Batman even makes a comment at the end of the episode being like, yeah, I just hope you don't think, you know, every place is like this, because they're really needed. And I don't like that at all. I don't think that's the idea we should be getting out of this episode, especially if it's supposed to highlight the issues with a place like this.
I hope you don't think this place was typical.
No. I sure wish we didn't need them.
I know.
What for me was a really good episode is ultimately soured slightly by the ending, but nonetheless it was still a good episode and still a good look into the horrors of sending your kids to a place like the ranch. For my final episode, I wanted to talk about April Moon. Now again, April Moon isn't necessarily like an episode that made me feel like I was going to be scared or anything along those lines. It's more along the lines of the last two episodes that we've looked at, in the idea that the concepts that they bring up are scary relative to what you could potentially be going through in your everyday life, and they just have a sci-fi or futuristic twist. Another thing this episode handles heavily is body modification, that being getting surgeries to enhance yourself physically. You guys have probably seen this on screen, or at least some pictures of it on screen. It's a lot of surgery, so think a little bit of like, if you're not into surgery, that's kind of a decent portion of this episode, but it's mostly just implied because obviously it's a kid's show. But what this represents is unfortunately an inside job. Basically, at least what I've gathered to be an inside job. Basically, this gang has this doctor that is working for them, and this doctor is only doing so under the threat that his loved one will be hurt and or killed if he does not continue to do work for them and to continue to modify them in order to make them super powerful, in order to deal with people like Batman, to deal with the police, and to keep getting away with their crimes. Although ironically, in a day and age where camera tech is super advanced, like in the future, why the hell are they not wearing masks? They just decide not to wear masks. Like, they must be stupid. Unless they were taking out the security cameras and I just wasn't paying enough attention, and I wrote that in my script because I love little tangents. But besides the point, basically this episode boils down to doctors being forced to do bad things and that he doesn't want to do because he has a loved one that's in danger. And man, when I say loved one, I mean like this is the only thing in his life that he actively cares about. This doctor is pretty old, and let's just be honest, April Moon is looking fairly young. So I don't even know how this was working in the first place.
April changed my whole life. Have you ever met anyone like that? I spent 20 years working day and night to help other people, but my own life was empty.
I mean, dude went on to marry his super hot nurse that had been working with him for, I believe, presumably like a year or so. And they had been married for, I don't know, the show doesn't really give us an answer. Maybe a year, maybe a small amount of time. Again, the time frame on all of this is a little funny, so I don't actively know how long they were together, which would help me piece together my theory that comes at the end of this episode. But either way, the two characters were married, he seemed to love her more than anything. But it seems as though that love was short-lived because the gang not only breaks in after he tells them he won't do body modifications for them, but also steals and kidnaps his wife and obviously puts her under threat, all in exchange for becoming more powerful. But you see, that's where the twist of it all comes in. It's that at the end of the episode, when the Doctor trails Batman and follows him, what he ends up finding is that April herself isn't exactly in very much danger. As a matter of fact, she seems to very much be enjoying her captivity and has taken up being in love with her captor, something that is ostensibly the worst possible scenario for the Doctor, who has been doing things against his morals and against his will for months, believing he is protecting her. Meanwhile, the big bad boss man is piping out his girl on the side while giving her jewels.
No! No!
Somebody's out there.
And that anguish felt so real. Like, could you even imagine being in this situation? And it led me to like the idea that maybe this was all an inside job. Potentially April had been planted to be there and planned on marrying him so that they could run this as an inside job. But she has a line of dialogue about how the professor could never buy her things like this that leads me to believe that at some point during her capture, she ended up deciding to flip sides and to hook up with that dude. And honestly, it's just a horrible situation all around. I mean, I'm trying to think of it from her perspective, and you know, maybe the idea of instead of spending her time in a locked cellar in the basement getting beaten and or taken advantage of, she instead does it on her own terms. I don't know. It's a really dark concept when you think about it, and it's even worse when you realize that the Doctor had used April Moon as his shutdown code, his way to stop his cybernetics from being used if he didn't want them to be used. A failsafe he probably intended to use once she came back to him. And then the end of the episode gets even more dark because it is so Dexter-esque at the end of the episode. It's wild.
Understand?
I understand. No holding back.
Basically, bro at the end there had no idea that the Doctor had seen him with April Moon, so he like went and spun back. And well, the Doctor wasn't gonna have it. He thought he was going in for some more upgrades, but instead he was going to get destroyed. And I think it's made very clear at the end of the episode that basically the Doctor never would have gotten April Moon back, even if she wasn't with the gangster. He was going to use her as a carrot on the stick until the Doctor eventually fought back and ended up dead. It was honestly a very, very dark episode when you really sit down and think about it outside of the world of just comic books and you put it into the contextualization of IRL. It's definitely a dark episode. And it's the one I want to end on. Once again, a little bit of tech horror, a little bit of body horror with all of the guys having their body parts fall apart, which was a little creepy. And then just an uncomfortable but very human situation that just makes me icky, like, to think about and to watch, especially in like a children's TV show setting. Anyways, probably taking up more than enough of your time. So once again, thank you all for watching. I truly appreciate it. If you want to leave a like, it helps out the channel a lot. If you want to leave a dislike, please leave me a comment down below with some constructive criticism. Helps me be a better creator for all of you. If you want to sub, it's free and you can always unsubscribe later. It truly helps the channel out so much. And finally, if you want to join my Patreon, it's about $1 a month. You gain access to all these videos early without all of the changes and edits I have to make for YouTube. So like the censoring, the changing of the footage in the background for copyright, all that fun stuff. As well, you can join the Discord, which allows you to just talk with other members of the community and hang out. And finally, if you're in the $5 or above tier, I shout your name out at the end of each and every one of these videos. So shout out Metal Monk, shout out West Belladonna, shout out Oscar, shout out McGann, shout out eSubert13, shout out Gabriel Lafonte, Transgers1, Video Gamer 75, shout out Golden Boy 420, Dakota Ross, and Donovan Gomez, MC Bomb 27. You all are amazing. Hope you all have an absolutely fantastic day.